Welcome back to GTD. It is football time. Got some college football and some NFL talk for you this week. It was a great weekend in college football. Some unexpected upsets, some expected upsets if you watched the episode last week, and then good week of NFL action as always. But let's get right into it with the big one. Penn State hosting Ohio State. The stoppable force of Ryan Day versus the movable object of James Franklin versus Ohio State. And Buckeyes came out on top. It was a solid game. Ohio State took home the victory 20-13, but felt like Penn State really missed an opportunity here once again.
Yeah, we saw this coming. Penn State, kind of fraudulent. Should have lost to USC.
Kinda.
Didn't lose USC. And here we are. They play Ohio State yet again. Another big matchup for James Franklin, and he loses it. A lot of people want his head. He's not getting fired. He wins 10 games. He wins 10 games a year. It's not
Hold
happening.
on, stop.
What?
We'll cut that.
Why?
No.
We don't cut anything. This is a live tape show.
Don't worry about
it. Yeah. I've lost my train of thought.
You're talking about James Franklin and people wanting him fired.
Yeah, that's what I said. People want his head.
Move on.
Okay. They want to fire it. He's not getting fired. He wins 10 games a year. He's just not going to get fired. He will win a big game eventually. It did not happen this year. Ryan Day got his big win, though. And now Penn State's out of the top 5, so we can celebrate that because they should have never been there. But the college football playoff rankings come out after we record this, so by the time we're talking about this, you will know. They will know Penn State's not up there. Maybe top 12, but not in the top 5.
I'm curious to see where Indiana goes.
I am as well. But they beat Ohio State in a very low-scoring defensive matchup. This game was back and forth for a little bit, tight for a little bit, and then Ohio State wins by a touchdown.
Yeah, the Penn State chance on the goal line at the end there. I don't know how that's your fourth down play.
Yeah.
I don't get that at all. You have a decent enough running game, and even just try to find Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren was so good in this game, and he's been great for you all year, one of the better tight ends in the country. And for them to just go, I kind of don't feel like giving it to him. I don't get how that's the play call. And it just feels like classic James Franklin overthinking from Penn State here. And Ohio State...
Shades of Lane Kiffin.
Yeah. Ohio State's going to need now a win over Indiana still to make the Big Ten Conference title game. But I think that's going to be a really good game. I'm excited for that game.
That's
going
to be an incredible game as well.
Now the Buckeyes are set up pretty well moving forward, though.
Yes. Oregon still reigning on top of that conference.
9-0.
Indiana right behind them, also undefeated. Another upset. Maybe a little unexpected. Texas A&M goes to South Carolina.
Definitely a lot unexpected.
Beamer Ball shows up, dethrones the top of the SEC, which, I mean, Texas A&M looked very good of late. They made some quarterback changes that I think helped their team. I think he's a much better option there.
Well, Lenore Sellers finally got uninjured, which helped.
Right. It was his first completely healthy game. He had been kind of playing a little bit, babying it. But now he's back. And those quarterbacks, very similar play from the two quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I like both of them. Good young talent, going to be good young stars in the SEC. South Carolina may be like a Vanderbilt story of next year. Maybe a little house to be reckoned with. I mean, they've been reckoned with this year. They've almost beat a couple teams.
They're very close to being 7-1 right now. And
I think 10 points.
Yeah, this is a very solid team. I feel like I've said it every week, but the edge duo of Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart is just unfair up front for the Gamecocks.
In the trenches, they're one of the best in the SEC.
Yeah, and you finally got the prime Arkansas version of Rocket Sanders in this game. 144 yards, 7.2 per carry, 2 touchdowns. Lenore Sellers even over 100 yards on the ground. But my favorite performance from this game is Joshua Simon. 4 for 132, 2 touchdowns. Kind of a Randy Moss stat line, I would say. A really fun game for that receiver. But A&M, man, I felt so good about this team after the LSU win last week. I was like, okay, they've cleared the hurdle they really needed to. They can focus on winning the rest of their games, and then they can try to attack Texas, and then they go out and immediately get murdered by South Carolina.
Texas A&M lost this game in the first quarter.
They did.
They got punched in the mouth in the first quarter and did not respond at all. Not even badly. They just didn't respond.
Well,
and that's really was the game.
I don't think they lost it in the first quarter because they did have the 17 points in the second quarter. The fact that they got shut out in the second half.
Yeah.
They lost the second half 24-0, and they lost the game by 24 points.
I just think in a game like this, you're going to South Carolina. It's a night game. I mean, you know the environment. You're in the SEC. You have a similar environment at your home field. Like, you know what's happening. You know South Carolina is going to come out and ready to play. They did, and you didn't have an answer for them in the first quarter. That you should know as Texas A&M, you got to go in there and shut down that crowd early, and they did not. And their crowd rocked the entire night. And shut them out in the second half.
With you, I thought you'd be going on about their lack of halftime adjustments. I was expecting
I'm
that.
talking about their lack of adjustments after they got punched in the mouth.
Well, I think they made good adjustments because they put up 17 points in the second quarter and they tied the game. They tied the game going into half.
I think
so. I think they're fine there.
They adjusted well, but I just think letting the crowd stay in the game, like
that's fair enough.
That's all I'm saying. Is like you have to start the game better.
Yes,
you have to make pregame adjustments. We'll call it.
Yeah, I still think they lost it in the first quarter since they tied it back up.
I just think that kind of gave South Carolina like, oh my gosh, we can actually do this.
Yeah. Well, I think this South Carolina squad is a team that has a lot of confidence because you look at how good they are this year.
And that's what their coach instills.
Yeah, this is a team that I don't think anyone wants to see right now. They feel like they do this about once a year. They just ruin a playoff contender's day.
And they've done it almost a few times this year.
Yeah. So I think no one wants to see South Carolina. They play Vandy this weekend. That'll be a fun game of two.
Vibes matchup.
Fun stories in the SEC right now. But let's move on to another side of the SEC, the Florida-Georgia game, and depression.
Georgia is continued to struggle, especially in the first half. Carson Beck still on his decline. One of the top quarterback prospects coming into the season.
3 picks.
Not even in the conversation as far as quarterback prospects right now. I mean,
he's still in the conversation because there's a development thing, but he's fallen down a lot. He and Quinn Ewers have both fallen down a lot. But for me, I'm curious to get your perspective on this because did you watch this game?
Yep.
Okay, so
of course. Do
you think that this is what I think, and I want to see how you feel about this, if this is just Florida homerism or what. I think if DJ Lagway does not get hurt, Florida wins this game.
I don't...
Because the offense did literally nothing after he got injured.
Yeah, I agree. I think if Lagway stays in, Florida wins only because they hold the ball longer. They have more time of possession.
And this game...
Georgia less chances.
This game's a lot closer than the 34-20 score looks. One of those touchdowns for Georgia was super late in the game, kind of a garbage time touchdown. But it really felt like Florida had every chance to win this game, and just the defense couldn't quite hold out enough. Obviously, you don't expect Aiden Warner to come in as your third-string guy from the start of the year and light the world on fire. So, no blame to Aiden Warner whatsoever. I just think you're unlucky. It is what it is right here. But listen, Florida moving forward, there's a lot of good young talent on this team.
I think Napier's kind of shut down the whole, I need to go, I don't belong here.
I don't think he has, purely because Florida's still 50th in recruiting right now.
Yeah, but I mean, it's Florida. They will get once he's got to win to prove to guys like, hey, you can come win with me. I think next year he has a winning season.
And the Tennessee game was the perfect chance to do that before he threw it away. So I'm not sold personally on keeping Napier. I think the big selling point for keeping Napier is you don't have to worry about losing DJ Lagway to the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a killer blow.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere after this season, the way it's kind of shaken up. Another game where the scoreboard doesn't really do it justice is Miami-Duke. That game was very, very close till the end, and then Cam Ward just put the team on his back and said, all right, we got this. And there's been a lot of talks.
400 yards and 5 touchdowns.
And there's been a lot of talks about Miami's defense being very suspect, and they are. But I'm going to give them credit. They got the picks, they got the turnovers, and I'm putting that second pick as the game winner. That gave Miami momentum. It gave them the ball back. They scored off that pick as well. They just the defense, yes, they are not great, and a better team is probably going to score a lot on them, but that's kind of how they play. They're a team that's hot in the playoffs. You don't want to see them. They will outrun you. It's just a drag race with them. You're going to score a lot of points, but they may score more than you. That's kind of their play style. And their defense, like we saw in Duke, may have the 1 to 2 big plays that secure the win. So Miami, while their defense will give up a lot of points, kind of fits their play style, and I would be very scared to see them in the playoffs.
I've said this all year. I feel like they're a very budget version of 2019 LSU with a freaky offense, a questionable but good enough defense. And they're not 2019 LSU by any means, don't get me wrong, but I think they're built kind of from a similar mold with the way this team wins games.
I think Cam Ward, you can talk about Austin Jeanty, I think he's my Heisman right now. 100%.
I think if Miami runs the table undefeated and at least makes it to a playoff semifinal, I give him the Heisman. But I still think Jeanty deserves it right now. I think it's between those two. I think it's close.
It's close.
And Cam Ward, I will say, I did have him behind Travis Hunter a couple weeks ago. He has now moved up into second for me. So if he keeps playing this well, you never know. Right. But Miami, solid win for them. They moved to 9-0 on the season. What a job Mario Cristobal is doing down there right now. I had a lot of doubts about him, and
I love the hire. I loved it.
I was very worried because I was a guy who watched him really restrict Justin Herbert at Oregon and make him seem like a worse player than he was. And so I was worried about him doing that with Cam Ward and kind of suffocating this Miami offense. But credit to Cristobal.
Seems like he's kind of on the opposite.
Yeah.
He's like, let's focus all on Cam Ward.
He's let Cam Ward go. And now if I'm a Miami fan, I am pretty much totally sold on Cristobal as a head coach if he's going to let the offense. Yeah. So I like that for Miami now. And let's keep talking about the ACC. And it's time for Keegan's victory lap of the week in Louisville-Clemson. I will say I was completely wrong here. I thought Clemson, if you would have told me that Phil Maffa ran for 171 yards, I would have said they blew out Louisville. But Louisville just was the better team, frankly. Louisville was the better team. Tyler Shuck didn't do anything insane, but he played well enough. And Isaac Brown, true freshman, is a star for the Cardinals.
Yeah, no, he's going to be fun to watch. I wasn't sold on Clemson's offense. I think their defense was decent. I still think their defensive line is pretty good. But they really
struggle,
didn't.
though.
Yeah, they really didn't show up.
They struggled massively.
I think they'll bounce back. I wasn't really sold on Clemson's offense really to be able to just outscore their opponents, especially when they do play a higher scoring team. And you saw that here with Louisville. Louisville doesn't have the reputation to be a high scoring team, but they've showed up for games. They
put up 45 on Miami.
Right. They've been they've been sketchy. Like some weeks they'll show up and play really good ball, and so like Miami, they played good ball, they still lost.
I think there's a team that's kind of fallen victim to the perception of the ACC, because if you look at the ACC right now, if you throw the ACC up against the Big 12 or even the Big 10 this year, I'm taking a lot of those ACC teams. You talk about
a Big 12, 100%.
You talk about if you're giving what's like a top of the Big 10 team kind of lower down, like in the middle area,
Penn State,
like behind Indiana and Penn State, whoever's right there, that kind of like middling
Iowa?
Iowa, Wisconsin, those kind of teams. I think if you throw a Louisville or a Clemson or a Virginia Tech, they beat those Big Ten teams.
I would agree.
And so I think the ACC...
Maybe not Virginia Tech, but I would agree.
The ACC is kind of being slept on right now, and it's hurting the rankings of teams like Louisville. They're now 6-3. I get they're ranked again now, but only 25th. SMU team that only has one loss to an undefeated BYU team is still not ranked overly high. Miami's right up there, sure, but then like even Duke is a solid team, and they're still, I don't think, getting the respect that they deserve. Pitt, obviously, only with the one loss to SMU. I think, are they unranked right now? Did they get unranked after that? Well, I guess for playoff rankings, we don't know yet, but
right.
But still, I feel like the ACC deserves a bit more respect than it's getting right now this season, and we'll see if that moves or if that changes moving forward for different seasons.
And lastly, in the ACC, we have SMU and Pitt.
Yeah.
Everything on paper said to take SMU. Like
this felt like a pure coin flip to me, and SMU was like, "Why would you think it was a coin flip? We're gonna murder them."
Yeah, it was weird. Like Eli Holstein playing a little injured, but even with him healthy, I still think SMU beats them.
Pitt had no defense in this game.
Right.
And the Pitt defense had been their calling card all season, and SMU went out. Kevin Jennings threw for 306. Brashard Smith ran for 161 and 2 touchdowns. If you're going to be a team that's built on defense and you allow 48 points, you're probably losing the game.
Yeah, well, SMU's offense is electric, though. I mean, they score points. I mean, the only time they've scored less than 20 was against BYU.
And that was in Provo, was it not?
No, it was in Texas.
Don't listen to me.
Right. But then again, BYU, if you ask me, they're top 5 in the country. But
jeez, okay.
Maybe not actually.
Pump the brakes.
Yeah. Okay. Forget I said that, but they are definitely top 8 in the country. And it's just, SMU's offense is electric. I think they would just outscore Pitt anyways, just because even though Pitt's got the defense, I don't think it matters. SMU has shown up week in and week out and proved it. I still think Miami's going to run this conference.
I completely agree, because they've gotten through the hard portion of their schedule now.
Yeah.
They have a pretty easy run from here on out. But let's move over to the Big 12, and it's time for my victory lap of the week.
Yeah, more Big 12ing.
Texas Tech took down Iowa State. Iowa State, I've said for probably the last 3 weeks on the show, is the most fraudulent team in the country.
Coming, yeah.
The loss is coming. almost came versus UCF, and this week it did come versus Baron Morton
Yeah.
and the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
And I've been saying it since week 3 that Iowa State's not the top dog in the conference, and that BYU's the top dog in the conference. And but we knew that. That's stuff we knew. We all knew that.
Iowa State, I think, has been horrendously overrated. Matt Campbell's been doing a great job, but I just Texas Tech's a solid team as well. They're 6-3 now in the season without a very weird loss to Baylor last week. The week before this game, I think they're ranked right now at 7-2. So you don't want to see Texas Tech coming if you're a Big 12 team right now.
But as of right now, I think it's Colorado BYU for the championship game.
Yeah, because Kansas State, we don't even have this in the show, but Kansas State with the loss to Houston.
Yeah.
Avery Johnson, what are you doing,
Their
buddy?
season is over.
That was not over technically.
Yeah.
Because they have tiebreaker over Colorado.
Okay. But I think as of right now, BYU's probably most definitely getting into the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a team. Maybe if Kansas State makes it and they play really well, they can do it. But I don't think a Colorado or Iowa State. I don't think any of those teams. I don't think SMU beats.
I think a Colorado BYU game would be very fun. I think a Kansas State rematch would be interesting because that game was in Provo. A lot of weird bounces and turnovers in that game. I think if Kansas State cleans that up, they have a chance. But they've been so turnover prone this season. I don't know if they can do that, but. Iowa State, the point of this section, is knocked off. They are 7-1 now. Texas Tech moves to 6-3. Then finally, how about a round of applause for the Ole Miss Rebels for finally choosing to show up to the season?
Jackson Dart, way to go!
5-15 and 6 touchdowns. This is the Ole Miss everyone thought you were going to be getting at the start of the year, and if I were an Ole Miss fan, this game would infuriate me more than anything else this season because why couldn't you do this versus Kentucky?
Why did it take so long for this to click?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I guess
you think this is kind of because of the way their team is built, just so much in the transfer portal that they didn't have the time to gel.
Well, that's what I said at the start of the year. I said this team might struggle to gel, and you've looked at it now and they seem to have it all together. The defense is still, I would say the defense could be improved. I think it has improved from the start of the year. I would say it's slightly above average now at this point. But the offense has really taken off. And Jackson Dart throwing for over 500 yards against the Arkansas defense that has at least been serviceable for a lot of this season. Great performance from the Rebels. And Ole Miss fans will finally get me to stop hating on your team now that you've done something like this. Although knowing the SEC, they'll probably go out and lose to Mississippi State at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I mean,
they get an interesting stretch in the year though. They get Georgia this week, then they get a bye, then they get at Florida, and then they get Mississippi State. And DJ Lagway should be healthy for that game.
I think they beat Georgia and Mississippi. Or no, sorry, I think they beat Florida.
Calm down.
I think they beat Florida and Mississippi State.
I think the game versus Florida is close. I think they beat Mississippi State because they get them at home. It's in Florida.
Okay, I think it's close. I still think Ole Miss wins. The Georgia game, very interested to see.
That'll be in the picks episode later this week.
If they beat Georgia, that's big.
They've got a playoff chance again if they beat Georgia because they would be 8-2 with that win.
Tied with Georgia.
Yeah, the Kentucky loss is brutal though. But let's move over to the NFL. And the big news this week is Saints coach Dennis Allen has been fired after losing 7 games in a row. And good riddance, you lost to the Bryce Young-led Panthers. Granted, I think Bryce Young still has potential, but the Panthers are awful. You cannot be losing to the Panthers.
Yeah, especially after what we saw this offense can do at the beginning of the season with the most explosive offense in like the history of the NFL for the first 2 games, really, and then just like nothing. Like it's weird. How do you go from that to that? The only way you can explain that, I mean, obviously the quarterback got hurt, so that's part of it. But coaching and maybe
the defense is bad too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think they pulled the trigger a little bit too harsh on Dennis Allen.
I don't. I think he deserved to be fired last year.
Oh, well.
And the Saints have done so much kicking the can down the road with salary cap and contracts and aging players. You knew this implosion was going to happen eventually, and it's hit big time.
Yeah.
And they're still absolutely way over the cap. I think it's $80 million over the cap still. So
I think the rebuild is going to continue to be building.
And they're not great at drafting either. They are under the radar terrible at drafting.
Yes, very much.
You look at who was the Trevor Penning, the left tackle I drafted, has really struggled. Pete Werner has not been great. So if you're a Saints fan, I think nervous times right now. But then Dak Prescott out longer than you expected. I think with a hamstring.
Got an MRI in the second half. Seemed like, okay, maybe 1 to 2 weeks. Gets an MRI. comes back. They're like, okay, it's worse than we originally thought.
Also, if
He's
I had
gonna
a
be out
dollar,
for probably about 5 to 6 weeks.
if I had a dollar for every time I read blank out longer than expected with hamstring injury, I would be a millionaire. The hamstrings are so finicky.
Yeah.
That's why I'm very worried about DJ Lagway. But the
But
NFC,
even despite Dak having the hamstring injury, Cowboys off to a 3-5 start.
yeah, they're bad.
Not very good. You make Dak
All
the
in.
highest paid player in football history, and he comes out and I'm going to say it, he comes out and beats Dak Prescott. He's himself.
I will say we had a big debate to start the year on the quality of Dak Prescott, and I said I thought he was fringe top 10. He has not played remotely close to that this season. He's been very bad. I think he's massively regressed. Dak is a weird player to me because his first couple years in the league, he was very solid. And it feels like he's a player that's gotten worse and worse every season.
He has 100%. I will stand by that. Dak's first 2 years in the league was great. He's had some spurts 2 years ago. He had a good season. But really since then, turnovers have been an issue. The interception has been an issue.
I think
It
it's
just
a lot to
hasn't
do
been
with
anymore.
him losing his mobility because of the injuries.
Oh, 100, yeah. Because you had to plan for him to he would move out of the pocket. He'd make things happen in the field. He can't do that because of his injuries. So now you don't have to plan for that. You just have to plan to make Dak beat you passing. And
Yeah.
I don't think he can.
And then when the
Even with
Cowboys struggle to
receiving
run the
core.
ball with the running backs, it gets even worse. So
Right.
I think it's just going to get worse and worse for the Cowboys, honestly. But the NFC North, one team it's not getting worse for is the Detroit Lions, who is this the best team in the league right now?
100%.
I completely agree.
I back that statement.
They are so good.
Yes. Hands down, the best team in the NFC. You can argue with the Chiefs and the AFC or maybe the Bills. I'm going Lions right now. I think they're the Super Bowl favorites, or should be. I'm probably the Chiefs are probably still the favorite by Las Vegas standards, but Lions are my favorite.
I think for me, it's Lions, Chiefs, Bills in that order right now. I think you have to respect the undefeated record of the Chiefs, although maybe if you're watching this, they lost to the Bucks on Monday Night Football. You never know. But I think that the Chiefs, even though they're not blowing teams out and every game is close, there's something to be said for being undefeated in the NFL. I'm still very impressed by that.
Yeah.
So, but NFC North still remains a gauntlet. Vikings won again this week. I know the Bears lost to the Cardinals, but the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears are going to bear.
Now let's let this Derrick Henry fan talk about Derrick Henry.
I was going to say, lastly, he's my favorite player of all time, being an Alabama fan. Still my favorite guy to wear the crimson red. Derrick Henry. I loved watching him as a kid. I still love watching him when he went to Baltimore. I think we had an episode right after that free agency thing came out. And I said he's going to have a year similar to Mark Ingram. He's going to go to the Ravens, a team that loves to run, has a running quarterback, is built to run. And he's going to have a great year. And he's had a touchdown every single game. He's had one game he didn't have a rushing touchdown, but he had a receiving touchdown. So he's had a touchdown every single game. Broke 100 career rushing touchdowns. Makes him 10th all-time on the list.
Very cool.
Very, very cool. He's a leading rusher with over 1,000 yards right now. And it's fun to watch him. He's finally having, like last year was disappointing by Derrick Henry standards. He's finally having that year. He looks like he's gotten his speed back. He's faster. He's quicker, which is crazy because he's just getting older.
He's
and
29.
He's still an animal.
Yeah, Derrick Henry is so impressive. And it feels like you've really seen a running back resurgence across the NFL in general this season. More too-high shell, more teams trying to defend the pass, and you just run the ball on. It's worked very well for a lot of teams. And you look at these older running backs. Joe Mixon's playing great for the Texans this season as well. Saquon Barkley just backwards hurdled a man this week, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the run game in the NFL is definitely back. But I think that's it for football this week. If you want to see our picks for the weekend of college football, tune in on Thursday. You can check that out there. If you want to see NASCAR, that'll be out. A lot of controversy there. That episode will be out. If you want to see us yell at each other for 15 minutes, go tune into the F1 episode where we argue about Lando Norris for a very long time. So if you're into that, check that out as well. But that is it for football this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Yes, and World Series is coming later this week as well.
Yes.
So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you on Thursday.